We're going to keep the basketball conversation going with Kevin Minnick of NJ Advanced Media. Good morning, Kevin.
Hey, good morning, Sully.
What's happening, bud?
Hey, it's championship weekend.
Yeah, you all fired up or what?
I'm awake. I'm fired up. I'm ready to go.
Nice.
Should be a real good day.
Before we get into
weekend,
we get into the games, Kevin, I wanted to get your thoughts. We've been kind of a theme this morning, talking about these high school athletes, and I've just been so impressed throughout the last 5 years, the glory days of how these kids handle themselves. In speaking with the media after games, and particularly this time of year when you're coming up on tough losses in state playoff games, and just want to get a couple quick thoughts from you about your time covering high school sports, which goes on about 2 decades now, and how that's evolved with the post-game interviews and how these kids handle themselves. I've just been so impressed with these kids.
Yeah, it's going on for more than 2 decades, Sully. I'm a little bit older than that. I've been doing this for 30 years.
30?
So,
wow, okay. I shortchanged you a little bit.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. I must have been a little weak when I first started out. Just didn't remember. But I think it is it's a tough call, and it's a tough thing when when you've kind of maybe been there in the past as a player. Not necessarily myself, but other people. Maybe when you've been there as a high school athlete yourself, or when you have kids of your own. It becomes a difficult situation sometimes to talk to kids especially after. I mean, obviously after wins is great and everybody's all excited and they'll talk your ear off. But the biggest thing is trying to get from my perspective. The biggest thing when you're trying to get information from a kid after a loss, the coach is usually not a problem. I've run into times when coaches just will not speak and don't want to talk about it because of the loss. But the coaches for the most part after a loss are fine. You got to give them a few minutes to kind of gather themselves after a game, and then everything's okay. But kids take it so much harder than the coaches, I think, do, because coaches are kind of, for those that have been around, okay, the season's over, this is what happened, and they're coming back the next year. There's times when kids aren't coming back, and reality finally sits in, and it's like, oh boy, this really was my last game. And you can think about it all you want leading into it, but then when that reality hits that it is now over, sometimes that really keeps a kid. It keeps a kid from being as, I guess, open and honest and as they usually have in the past. But that's the biggest thing. The biggest thing is obviously after a loss and trying to get, and when that happens, 9 times out of 10, when I get done talking to a kid after a loss, I look at the tape recorder that I'm doing it. It may have only lasted 30 seconds. It may have only lasted a minute.
Yep.
You try to just get a couple of real quick takes on something and not really have the kids start to go back through the game, and then he starts thinking about it more, and then you can see if the tears haven't already flowed, they start flowing. So like I said, it's a fine line in that you want to do your job and you want to try to generate and get some information after a loss because it's your job and you kind of have to do it. But at the same time, you have to kind of have to put that human element into it and realize that everything that these kids and everything these coaches have worked for a year, for 2 years, some for the majority of their life, has finally come to an end, and you kind of have to factor that into it too. So you don't really want to ask something that's going to really draw out of, I guess, a lot of emotion out of somebody. You kind of want to just get what you get enough to cover your bases and then move on.
And Kevin, one other thing that struck me just going through the social media this past week, and you're the perfect guy to speak to this because of your new position with NJ Advanced Media and trying to tell all the great stories in South Jersey, is just how much these kids root for each other. You see it when somebody mentions, hey, I got an offer from this school or I got an offer from that school, and you might see kids from 5 different schools say, hey, congratulations, keep the 609 hashtag and all that stuff, and they're really trying to pump up South Jersey. And it almost seems like to me that there's all these athletes down here really are craving for some respect. Obviously, they get overshadowed sometimes by all these great schools and teams and athletes in North Jersey. And it just seems like that's kind of a theme this year with the social media being what it is these kids want to say, hey, there's a lot of great talent in South Jersey, so take the time to look at what we're doing.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think, the way social media is now, you can get information out there so fast to so many people. And, the knock has been for quite a while is that, the South doesn't have the same level of talent as the North. I think when you look at it on an individual basis, the South does have the talent. It may not have the talent that rises to a national level, especially on a year-by-year basis that the North seems to have. But I think one of the biggest factors you take into consideration there is just the huge difference in population between the North and the South. I don't think people stop and think about that enough, and realize just how many more people live in the northern section of New Jersey than they do in the South. There's kids in the North that have never, ever seen a farm. They may have never seen a cow. And there's parts in South and there's parts in South Jersey where they're there, and for people down here in the South, it's a little bit more relaxed. It's a little bit more not as loud maybe, and not as boisterous. But up north, it's just a population overflow, and there's just so many more kids and so many more schools up there that the talent level in a certain area is just overshadows what happens down here. And but to the point of kids rooting for each other, I think that the fact is now these kids know each other, and it's not just through social media. They play on travel programs. They go to camps and combines. They go to they work out together. I think nowadays, and I think it's more of an explosion in the last I want to say 5 to 10 years, is just these kids actually know kids that go to a different high school. I think going back to my 30 years ago in high school, for me, I probably didn't know anybody that went to Cherry Hill East, or I didn't know anybody that went to Atlantic City. You only read about them, and that's how you knew about them. Nowadays, these kids know each other. They go out, they have dinner, their families know each other. I think it's a little bit different in that aspect. But you're right. In the social media is a great way for these kids to connect. And you know what? Especially at this time of year, you would hope that the team that just beat you goes on and wins a state championship, and then you can look and say, well, you know what? We might have lost that game, but we lost to the best team in the state. So maybe that takes a little bit of the pain away, from a loss.
Yeah, it just struck me as kind of this. Maybe I'm overstating it, but this collective standing up for South Jersey type of thing going on with all these. You see these college offers rolling in for particularly football and basketball and that kind of thing, and it struck me as something that I really hadn't noticed before, of all these kids kind of standing up for their area.
Yeah, and it just kind of, when those kids do that, I think that may also help, another kid who's maybe doesn't have the offer, or hasn't got the look, and if a kid throws out a couple of tweets, check out this kid, he's this, he's that, maybe there is that one or two college coach or a scout or recruiter that's following a certain kid, and he says, oh, well, we recruited this kid, and he loves that other kid, and he's telling me all about this other kid. Maybe we need to go see that kid. So, in a way, I think it's another way to kind of get some information out that may not have happened in the past.
Talking with Kevin Minnick of NJ Advanced Media. And Kevin, give us a quick breakdown of this weekend. I know we have a couple of South Jersey teams still left. The Cape Atlantic League is done in terms of high school basketball, but there's still a couple of really outstanding teams vying for state championships. Give us your breakdown of this weekend.
Well, today we have today non-public A, Camden Catholic. They're going to take on Don Bosco Prep, and Don Bosco's a defending champion. They've got themselves 3 Division I commits right now. They've been in the state top 20, probably in the top 10 all season long. Marcellus Earlington, people would remember him, I guess, from last year's game against St. Augustine, and he's a St. John's recruit, and Ron Harper Jr. is a Rutgers recruit. So Camden Catholic will have its hands full this afternoon with that team. They're extremely tough, but Camden Catholic, if they can dictate the pace and tempo and really do a nice job, they're going to have to control the glass as much as they can. But obviously, I think they're running into a team that they have not played like this year. Just with the talent level on that team. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a tough road for Camden Catholic today. And then tomorrow, South Jersey will have 3 teams playing in the finals. Shawnee will play in Group 4. They got themselves a win last night over a very tough and physical Trenton team. They kind of pulled away midway through the fourth quarter to defend their, not defend their title, but to get back to the rack, for another year. Last year they were there, lost to Linden with a team loaded with juniors. This year, tremendous experience. They're back. They've fulfilled at least their goal to this point. So they run into a really, really good Newark East Side team, though, tomorrow that is another team that's a top 10 team in the state that's got some tremendous athletes. So the key to Shawnee is hitting those 3-pointers that they love to take, and obviously defending the glass with Davon Robinson. If he can do what he's done all season long and really kind of, he's going to have to get himself, I think, 12 to 15 rebounds tomorrow to kind of keep them with it, and then keep Eastside off the offensive glass. I think they have a chance. The other 2 games tomorrow, Haddonfield will play the second game at 2 o'clock after Shawnee. They'll play in the Group 2 final. And, they're playing a Newark Central team that's very good as well. I mean, obviously at this point in the year, to be playing today and tomorrow, you got to be very good. But Haddonfield is a team that, if you look at them, they've overcome adversity all season long. They really didn't have their starting lineup together pretty much all season long. They had kids dropping like flies to injuries, to illnesses, and then you throw in the fact that they never played a true home game because their gym is still being under repair. So they've taken a bus every day, and here they are, 28-3. And to be honest with you, I never thought they would get here, especially when I thought Camden was going to be the team to beat. But they knocked off Camden in overtime last week. Mike DePersia with a putback on a weak side rebound, and here they are. So there's 2, and then the last game of the night will be the Group 1 game, and that'll be Woodbury and Cresskill. Cresskill's, I think, 29-2 right now. They were tinkering on the border of a top 20 team all season, but they've been obviously, I think, one of the state's top Group 1 teams throughout the year. And in comes a Woodbury team that I don't think anybody could take a realistic look at Woodbury and think they were going to make it back to a state final. They lost 4 starters off their team. They lost arguably one of the best players in their school history last year to graduation in Jazir Noel. But junior guard Aaron Estrada comes back. The other guys kind of follow his lead, and Aaron's played out of his mind in this season, and especially in this last couple of games in the tournament. That here's a Woodbury team with a first-year coach in Mark DeRuggiero, a Woodbury grad himself, playing in a state championship game. So people will use this motivation that I don't pick them to win games. That's fine. That's fine. I always tell people though, when you start talking about when publications pick you for games and they were wrong, that people always want to say, oh, well, you're disrespecting us. It's got nothing to do with disrespect, and it has everything to do with basically looking at it on paper. That's kind of how you have to look at it when you're making picks. But, Woodbury has kind of chimed in that Kevin Minnick hasn't really been picking Woodbury in this tournament, and that's fine. and that's fine. But I also tell teams, if that's what you need for motivation at this point in the year, then I think you're barking up the wrong tree. So, I think Woodbury's going to have a little bit of an uphill climb today as well, or tomorrow as well. But if I don't pick Woodbury, people shouldn't think it's a disrespect thing. I'm merely looking at what is on what's on paper in black and white for now. But and that's another thing, and I've kind of said through the years is that's why you play the game. So don't worry about what is in the newspaper. Don't worry about what people are saying. Go out and play the game, and then let the chips fall where they may. Hey, at this point in the year, if you're a South Jersey fan, you would hope that South Jersey represents itself extremely well in these 4 games over the next 2 days. You'd love to see them compete. You'd love to see, clearly down here, you'd love to see four state champions. While I don't think that's going to happen, jump on the bandwagon of your rival squad for at least one day, and represent South Jersey and look to see that South Jersey does what it's capable of doing. If South Jersey goes 4-0, great. If they go 0-4, well, you know what? They played against some very tough teams. They played against teams that were just better than them on that day. And, you go away knowing that you were the best team in South Jersey. You knocked off a Central Jersey champion to get to the state final. And you know what? At the end of the day, only one team's going to go home with a win. And at the end of the season, every team but one in the state that made it to the tournament is going to go home with a loss. So look for the bright things, look for the positive things, and support your teams, and we see what happens.
Great stuff as always, Kevin. We appreciate it. Up against the break, got to let you go, but we appreciate you taking a few minutes to help us break down the high school basketball playoffs. And have a great weekend, man.
Hey, thanks again. We're on our way to Toms River to start checking out these non-public games.
Yeah, man. Busy weekend for you.
Absolutely. We'll put a few miles on the car. I'm going to have to hit the gas station before I go, but, it's all worth it.
Great stuff. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
That was Kevin Minnick of NJ Advanced Media.